What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emery Cuzzy. I'm sitting here with Dustin Zimmerman, and we have a very fun week to talk about. We're going into Conference Championship week coming up this week, and there's a few games we get to recap. Some of the rivalry games that were a lot of fun from this last week.
Some of them more fun after the game than during.
Yeah, I mean, so many fights. How many? 8 fights?
I counted 4 or 5 that I saw Reddit posts about.
So there were 8
actual fights, not just quick skirt. Like I
right,
don't count
right.
the Auburn, Alabama one.
That's what I was going to say.
20 seconds.
Yeah, I think there was 8 total fights.
Yeah.
But real fights, if you don't include Houston versus Jacksonville after Aziz Al-Shaair killed Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I was playing Fortnite with my buddy, and I had it on my phone next to me, and he lives in Houston, and I was like, hey dude, your defender just took off Trevor Lawrence's head.
Literally.
She was like, oh, that doesn't sound good.
But college football fights, we had 8 total. The big ones, of course, included Florida State, Florida.
That was a good one.
The biggest one was Ohio State, Michigan, after Michigan beats Ohio State, which we'll get into in a second. There was a bunch of other ones, of course, but rivalry week, this is kind of what you expect.
It was like straight out of a movie, too, of all the fights and it happening over and over.
Yeah, it was like the 1 o'clock or the 11 o'clock games had a couple, and then the 3 o'clock games, and just kept going. The one that didn't, and I'll actually pull the screen up. I'm working on the wrong screen. And so here's last week's AP poll. If you want to look at it, if it's really nothing. A few teams have lost that we talked about. Rivalry week is always a lot closer than it needs to be because these teams are rivals. So there's a vendetta. There's a team with a chip on their shoulder every time they play each other.
Every time.
Every year. But looking at the games that we have to recap, there's 5 that we're going to talk about. Some of the big ones. So starting off, Ohio State could not score points in their game against Michigan, only being able to score 10 points. They looked pretty awful in that game. Just some things to notice, of course, is just what does Ryan Day have to do to win this game? And because he's played this game, I think he's 1-4.
He's 1-4.
Yeah, in the last. So it's what does he have to do to get past Michigan? And Michigan, they're worst by far since he started playing them.
Yeah, I mean, but if you watch this game, and they have Chip Kelly on their offensive staff too, a guy known for airing the ball out and getting a lot of points quickly. I don't understand the concept of, hey, we've run the ball up the middle, it didn't work, so let's keep doing it. When you have one of the most explosive offenses in the country with Quinshon Judkins, running back, Travion Henderson, and then you've got Jeremiah Smith and Egbuka as your wide receivers, and Will Howard, who can both run and throw, and you go, yep, we'll just run it up the middle.
Yeah, this game, like I said, was a little weird. You did look at the rushing attempts. I mean, 22 attempts, 10 for Henderson and 12 for Quinshon Judkins. Average of so they had an average of 3 yards a carry throughout the whole game, which was just awful. I just think Michigan has a good scheme against them every year because they came out. Khalil Mullins had another big day, had 116 yards and a touchdown. It was just I don't know, man. It just felt weird. The whole game felt weird all the way through. The score was 10-10 at halftime and ended 13-10. This was the sicko game of the year that we did not expect. Probably, we both had it where we thought Ohio State was going to win by 20.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've been dominant all year, and then they do this, and I just couldn't fathom what was going on the field. It was bad.
I'm a little sad that it's going to end up not mattering almost whatsoever because they're still going to be in the playoff. They don't have a chance for a top 4 seed anymore, but they're still a playoff team. They're not going to bump, I think 5 or 6 spots. Once we get the new rankings
we'll talk about it. Yeah.
Or Tuesday night. We're recording this Monday. We'll kind of see where they fall there, but just as an aside, Ryan Day is now 1-4 against Michigan and 65-6 against anyone that's not Michigan.
Yeah, and I don't understand.
What's funny is there are a not small number of Ohio State fans who really don't want Ryan Day as their coach anymore.
Yep, fair. I mean, I kind of get it. I mean, that is the big game. They don't care about it's their Super Bowl game.
It's not another game; it's the game.
Yeah, you can't lose to Michigan and expect to stay at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Next up, though, we did have the Texas versus Texas A&M after 13 years, right? They hadn't played
2011
in the Big 12, and now they're going to play in the SEC. Texas dominated basically the whole game.
Both sides of the ball, and it wasn't close.
Yeah, the O-line and D-line for Texas looked awesome. I mean, this was kind of the game everybody wanted to watch, and it didn't disappoint on the Texas side. I mean, their offense and defensive line were just absolutely controlling the game.
Yeah.
You didn't see very much of either of the Turners or Nick Scorton in this game. I mean, it was just pretty brutal and also just to put this out there, Kelvin Banks did get injured in the first quarter.
And
was out the whole game.
Yeah.
And it did not matter.
No,
they just ran all over A&M here.
Yeah.
So
no, it was what I expected. I mean, Texas is a dominant team, so.
Yeah, I know that our picks, of course, last week were you saying that A&M was going to cover or A&M was going to win the game, and I knew that was obviously biased, but this is kind of what we expected. I thought that this game was going to be a little bit closer because it is a rivalry game, but it just looked like Texas was the, by far better team and little brothered A&M a little bit here. So I think that A&M is good. I just don't know how good, and I also don't know what bowl they're going to get. But being 8-4, they'll be perfectly positioned to get a solid bowl game.
I mean, it's one of those people do have to remember with this because A&M has been all the hype in the media and on Reddit, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. They're coming off a 5-7 year, and what was last year, 6-7 or 7-6?
6-6, I think.
One
of the
and then
two.
we lost the bowl game. So, I mean, to have a first-year head coach, half the roster turnover basically in the middle of the season, our quarterback decides he is no longer comfortable in a pocket, so we have to give a freshman the reins.
Exactly.
And to still finish all that 8-4, obviously a very disappointing ending with losing to South Carolina, Auburn, and then Texas, and two of those being dominating losses. But it's still a huge step up from where we were as a program. We'll see with this year's transfer portal, which we'll get into in the coming weeks once more names get out there.
So this next game, though, because I know that we'll get on from the A&M whole thing. Sorry. Friday night, we had a absolute banger.
That was my favorite game of the year, maybe.
That was an awesome game.
Yeah.
And I was actually at a bar, and everybody was crowding the one TV that had the game on. And I was like standing on top of the chair to see over everybody because I was like, I'm not missing this.
No.
8 overtimes later, Georgia did find a way to pull it out against Georgia Tech. We did say earlier in the week or last week when we did our video that if Haynes King was playing, we felt a lot more comfortable with Georgia Tech. It was a 17.5-point spread.
Yeah.
When I believe he was said that he was in, it went to 17.5. Basically, it was at like 21 or something before that. That was all they needed. That was the spark they needed. Haynes King was awesome. 26 of 36 for 303, 2 touchdowns, and then 24 carries for 110 and 3 yards or 3 touchdowns. I mean, he's good at football. He makes that team so much better.
Yeah.
They are going to be in a bowl. They are 7-5, so that's good to see. And they almost took down Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun to watch. Unfortunately, I mean, I will say in that one, in the fourth quarter when they scored, and then didn't go for 2, you don't want to get in this battle with Georgia. You've had a fun game. It's been one of those Cinderellas. Oh my goodness, they're still in it. You have to end it here because you will not survive in overtime.
I'm a big believer in if you're
8 of them.
I'm a big believer in if you're the underdog at the end of the game and there's not much time left, go for 2.
Yeah,
because you have nothing to lose, first off, and second off, it's like there's your momentum. If you go into overtime, you don't have momentum. It's even again,
especially with the game being at Georgia.
Yeah, exactly. And then South Carolina versus Clemson. We said South Carolina was going to win this game.
Yep.
That was kind of the whole thing we talked about last week. They're just right now, they have looked like so much better of a team than Clemson had in the recent weeks. Clemson, they've been okay. They do have an opportunity because Miami lost, and we didn't put that up here, but Miami did lose in their game against Syracuse, which was a really big game. That allows Clemson to play in the title game, even knowing they lost to South Carolina for the ACC title. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see how you pick that game between SMU and Clemson and myself. But talking about this game, I just think South Carolina is good. They actually kind of kicked themselves shot themselves in the foot a few times at the beginning of the game with turnovers and stuff like that. And
absolutely.
They should have been down pretty good, but their defense is just so good, holding Clemson to 14 points. And then in the end of the game, going and scoring 10 points to win it all in the fourth quarter is how you win football games. And he just Lenore Sellers 20-yard run to win the game.
And don't forget the pick on Clemson's last drive. They
Yeah.
were driving. They were in field goal position. And then South Carolina made an insane diving pick.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Great play.
Yeah. Did hold Phil Moffitt a 3 yards a carry. Kate Klubnik didn't have a single touchdown. So, I mean, it just actually, I don't know. Did he have a rushing touchdown before I say that? Because I don't remember who had their rushing touchdown. Yeah, he had both rushing touchdowns. He did not have a passing touchdown. That's what I meant to say. But yeah, it was a good game, and it ended exactly how we kind of expected it to earlier in the week. So not much more to say. I'm so excited to be able to announce for this next game, Memphis has done it. They have given me a super dog win, winning the game by 10. This game was actually a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if you got to watch it on Thursday night, but it was a ton of fun to watch. There was just so much scoring going on, especially at the end of the game. 24 points in the fourth quarter. Love to see that. Both quarterbacks just airing it out. I do believe that Memphis had a rusher that went for 177 yards and a touchdown. Just fun to watch. And Memphis doesn't actually get the opportunity to play in the American Athletic Conference Championship game because they did have 2 losses in conference, while Tulane is actually going to continue and get to play in that championship game. But neither of these teams will have a chance at the playoffs. But this was such a great game to watch, and it was fun to see. Tulane really lost the game on turnovers, though, more than anything.
Yeah.
3 turnovers for Tulane, none for Memphis, and that was what kind of did them in my opinion. Fun game. Better game to watch than Thursday night, Green Bay versus Miami, to say the least. And we said that was going to happen if y'all were watching the show last week. All right. All right. So showing that first AP poll for week 14. We're going to go into championship week AP poll. The AP, of course, does not matter. We just use the AP poll because we have not seen the rankings come out yet because they come out tonight. This is what we get. If you look up there, though, a lot of green. Everybody's green except for 4 teams. I think 5 teams, actually, now that I say that. Because Oregon, they win their game and stay at number 1. And then the next 5 teams get to jump over Ohio State, who lost to Michigan, who we talked about. We're going to run through this AP. We're going to talk about some deeper things after this. So there's not much to say on this screen. But you can see the teams that lost. It was Ohio State, it was Miami, and it was Clemson. And it really opens the door for some other teams up there on the board. So would like to see Memphis did sneak in after beating Tulane, which is good to see. Happy to see that. Army's still in there and stuff like that. But let's go over to our next thing, which is conference championship games. We're going to be talking about all this because this has all the impact on not only the games themselves and who wins the conference, but who gets into the college football playoffs. The first 4 will not have any, I don't believe. The only team up there that actually has a chance at changing like the view of the college football playoff is Army.
Right.
So otherwise, we will be picking every game, and we'll be talking about all of these games in a totality, but these are the games that aren't going to matter as much. The ones that are upcoming will matter a lot more for who gets seeded into the college football playoff.
Yeah.
Miami, Ohio, or no, in Ohio, who you got?
I am taking Ohio in this one.
Just because?
I mean, it's going to be a fun game between 2 teams who haven't done a whole lot on the year. Matchup Predictor thinks it'll be close.
Yeah.
Right now, Miami has 2.5 point favorites. Hasn't changed much. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have a whole lot of reason. Miami, Ohio did impress me, though, beating Bowling Green at Bowling Green last week. Yeah. This past Saturday. Both on win streaks right now. I think it's going to be a toss-up, honestly. I think you could have gone either way. Ohio's losses are to Syracuse, Miami of Ohio. That one was at Miami of Ohio, though, by 10. And that's their last loss, actually. It was in October. Yeah, I'm going to give it to the Bobcats.
Okay.
I solely based off feel.
Fair enough. I'm going to be going the opposite side. I'll be going with Miami, Ohio. I think the winner of this game is going to either cover the -2.5 or win outright, of course. So I'm on the same page with you. I think it's a very close game. They also, of course, kind of feels like a rivalry game being in state and stuff like that. So I think that this is going to be one of those games that's a shootout. I believe the first game between the two of them was, let me make sure before, 30-20, which is, it was pretty close, I believe, towards the end of that game. And so Ohio, that's right. I do remember this game very well, actually. Ohio was down basically the whole game, and in the fourth quarter, they scored 2 late touchdowns to put them into an opportunity. That was actually, neither team has lost since that game.
Right.
Miami, Ohio is now 8-4. They had 4 losses prior to that. Ohio was 4-3. They are now, they're 9-3.
Right.
So neither team has lost since that game. But Miami, Ohio did kind of take it to them in the early part of that game, and Ohio tried to come back. But I do believe that this will be a fun, close game. Nothing crazy to talk about, though. Next up, Marshall versus Louisiana. Which side do you want on that one?
I'm taking the Herd.
The Herd.
We are Marshall. Got to go with the Thundering Herd on this one.
Who's the best player to ever play at Marshall?
I have no idea the best player to ever play at Marshall.
Randy Moss, right? Yeah. Best player to play at Marshall. I will say I'm going to be taking the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. I did watch them live against Texas State. What was that? 4 weeks ago or something like that.
A while ago now. They
looked good. Held us to. We're not that good at it, unfortunately, but they did make us look pretty tough, pretty rough in that game. I will say that, on both sides of it, they have a solid defense, and I think they can hold the Marshall Thundering Herd to under this crazy 56.5. I get total, so I'm guessing around 20-ish points for them. So I will be taking the other side in Louisiana Raging Cajuns. I also know that this game is in Louisiana, I believe.
Yes,
so I think that'll have a little bit to do with it too at Cajun Field. So
Marshall has played Virginia Tech and Ohio State this year, so I just think they've got the battle-tested mentality. Fair. They've been through it. And it's fun to say the Thundering Herd.
It is. So. It is a lot of fun. Yeah, as you said, the only games that Louisiana has lost is Tulane, 41-33, who we'll talk about in a second, and then they lost by a couple points to South Alabama, which I think they should have won that game. They would have won that game. I think it gave them a chance to possibly be in the playoffs, but it does not look like that's going to happen. They're just a little far out.
Outside shots, but
yeah, exactly. And then the next game is the Tulane Green Wave against Army. I will let you take this one also first.
Yeah, I'm taking Tulane on this one. I think they're just better than Army. I think they'll bounce back. They'll be just fine. They'll win. I'm excited to see what Army does against it, to be honest, because most of their season has been either against really bad teams or Notre Dame, who is a very good team. So I'm excited to see him play an actual mid-major who's decent and just see where it goes.
So my big thing with this game is is Bryson Daly going to do Bryson Daly things, right, or is Tulane going to be able to stop him? Another thing though is so Army actually has the best chance of any non-Power 4 or Mountain West team to make the playoffs. Yeah,
Boise State's still there.
Take Boise State and UNLV out basically. They have the best chance to make it based on odds. Yeah. I don't think they will make it, of course, but at the same time,
it's an 8.3% chance.
Hey,
is what ESPN's giving them.
Right, but they are the best, I believe, outside.
Yes, outside of Power 4 and Mountain West. Yeah,
perfect. So this game does have a little bit of implications. The line has moved from 4.5 to 5.5 in the way of Tulane. So I think that's an interesting thing. I just when I put it in this about 3 hours ago, it was at -4, so it has been bet to 5.5. I guess some money's coming on the Green Wave. But yeah, I think that this is an interesting game. Should be a lot of fun. I'm expecting it to be. It's a very two-sided game. It's a very spread attack, explosive type of team in Tulane, and then it's triple option on the other side. So we'll see how that game goes. I will be watching. That game will be fun to watch on Friday night. And then, what's the next game? Sorry.
Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State.
Yeah.
Jacksonville State of Alabama.
Yes. I'm gonna take Jacksonville State in this game. I think we actually all picked Jacksonville State to win because we do have Cam's picks also on here.
Yes.
So the -3.5 to Jacksonville State. Looking at that, I just think they're the better team in this scenario, and I think that they're going to get the win.
Was Jacksonville State the team last year who they did good enough to make a bowl, but because they were too new, they couldn't?
I thought that was James. Wait, is that not James Madison?
I think they both did.
Is that right?
I think both of them had that issue last year.
Let me see, because
because Jacksonville State won. Oh no, they made a bowl game. Never mind. They won their bowl game too.
Okay, they beat the Raging Cajuns.
It was 2 years ago. They're one of those teams that had jumped up, and the year before
in 2022.
Yeah, 2022 they didn't get a bowl game, but they only lost 2 games the whole year.
Yeah.
Jacksonville State's one of those teams that jumped up, wasn't supposed to be good, came in and destroyed a bunch of teams in their conference, but because of that weird NCAA infraction rule, they couldn't.
Right. I remember that now. Yes.
Even though they dominated, like Stephen F. Austin and Nichols and all them.
Well, I'd expect them to dominate again in this game. I just think they have more firepower up and down their team. So,
well, Jacksonville State's last game was at Western Kentucky, right?
Yes.
And they lost by 2.
No, they're gonna win.
It's gonna be a fun one.
They're gonna.
I do think at home, I think they win.
No, I actually think it's okay. So a lot of these games have already been played. I didn't actually put this out there, but we'll be talking about different teams in Miami, Ohio, played against Ohio already, things like that.
Right.
It's really hard to beat a team twice. And that's something we're going to actually have to emphasize multiple times during this video, because I think Jacksonville State probably wins by 2 touchdowns, because they should have won by 2 touchdowns in the first game.
Right.
And now they've already played each other. So now it's like, okay, now we get going again.
That's what I was mentioning with the Ohio one.
Right.
They got smacked the first time, but they've had the better record, better season. So, but in this one, I agree, Jacksonville State, though.
Yeah. And it'll depend on also like how you lose versus like, because we'll talk about Texas, Georgia in a little bit and stuff like that. And how you lose depends on how you come back and win and stuff. So I do believe that Jacksonville State has a better chance of coming back and beating Western Kentucky than I did with Ohio, because of the fact that Ohio was kind of beat down the whole game and then had to come back in the fourth quarter with 2 random touchdowns.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to happen necessarily with the team that lost by 2. Let's go on, though, to our actual conference championships that matter for our college football playoff. I know that's what really matters when we do these videos, is who's going to make it and who's not. And the first game will be the Big Ten, because we're going to start at the top. Number 1 versus number 3. As you can see, there's some efficiencies on the board. You have the 3rd offense and the 12th defense for Oregon, and the 5th and 3rd respectively for Penn State. Lots of prospects to watch. Of course, these teams are very good. That's why they're very good, is because they have these guys that are going to be NFL players one day. All of these prospect lists will be very long, except for some of these smaller schools that we'll get to in a little bit. But just looking at the Oregon side, they've got so much explosion on offense, and if they can do it and be consistent, that's one of my biggest problems with them, is just like, can they do it consistently? They are the better team in this case, but I don't know that they can do it consistently. So we will. Who do you lean in this game?
I am taking Oregon.
-3.5 or the other way? It's close.
Do I think Penn State will cover?
Yeah.
Let me see. Where are they playing at? They're playing in Indianapolis.
Yeah, it's Midway.
So kind of Midway. It's definitely a farther trip for Oregon. I mean, honestly, all that to be said, I think Oregon wins. I just don't trust Big Game James. I think I'll take Oregon -3.5. I have not high confidence in the spread whatsoever, but since you asked me and forced me to pick one, I will go that way. I just don't think Big Game James gets it done, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose by 3, because that's what he does.
Yes. So I'm actually going to be picking Penn State. And it's against everything I ever say.
I was about to say, at least 3 different episodes I've heard you not like James Franklin.
I don't like him.
You may have put more hate on him than I've put on Miami, and that says a lot.
He deserves the hate.
Yeah.
I did enjoy his press conference, though, after this last week where he beat Maryland. Where he was like, I don't know if you saw it or not, but
I saw that the coaches almost got in a fight.
Right.
That was interesting.
The press conference after the game, he addressed that and said, we have to win, and this is how we win. And if our 3s and 4s are scoring on your 1s, it's not my fault. Like, we're scoring because my 3s and 4s are beating your 1s. And it was really funny. The whole thing was funny. I'm going with Penn State because I think I just think they're going to find a way to win by, how do I put this? I know that I hate James Franklin in the best ways possible, but like I think that the team totality, I think that they're better. I know that they lost to Ohio State, who just lost to Michigan 13-10. That's a rivalry game. I also still believe that Ohio State could be the best team in the nation. That hurts my argument when they lose to Michigan 13-10. But that is a very important game in their actual school history rather than more so in like this year itself. I think that this Penn State team is actually better than this Oregon team on a lot of fronts. I think their defensive line is really good against so if you look up there, you see the edges up there. You see Abdul Carter, who's moved from an inside linebacker down to the end. I think that he is going to be the difference maker against this very good offensive tackle group on Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly Jr. I think he is one of the biggest problems for them. I wish Kevin Winston Jr. was playing this game. He's not. He hasn't played since week 2. But Jalen Reed has been their best player, tackle-wise, in the secondary. I just think they have more ways to win. I just wish, and of course, Tyler Warren needs to be talked about because he's just been insane. But I just think that they have more ways to win, and I think that they can do it. So I'm uncomfortably picking Penn State to win this game. No. Very uncomfortably.
I'm going to stick with Oregon, but I do like your reasons, though. With this, I think this will be a really fun matchup. I think it's not going to be as high scoring as people might think with seeing Oregon up there.
Right.
Kind of like how Texas A&M was a lot lower scoring than a lot of people thought it would be. I would not be surprised if it's similar to maybe not 17-7, but low 20s winning the game.
Fair enough. I also will say I think that it says defensive rankings, and if those are based on efficiencies, I would take Penn State's defense over the Oregon defense. They've been good with no names, in my opinion, over in Oregon. A lot better with no names than Penn State has, but I would still say that Penn State has the better defense. Penn State actually probably has the more effective explosion type of players in Nick Singleton, Tyler Warren. But at the other side, Jordan James has been really good. Tez Johnson's been really good, and Terrence Ferguson has made his name as one of the better prospects in this class. So a lot to talk about. There's a lot of really good players in this game, basically.
Yeah.
And pick your side, but I'm just happen to pick Penn State in this
one.
There you go. And then we'll talk about this next one, this Texas versus Georgia rematch. Texas is the number 1 team on offensive rating, which is crazy. I have them backwards. I apologize.
They're number 1 on defense and have been most of the year, 16th on offense. Yeah, number 1 overall, though.
I'll fix that while you go ahead and give your spiel on who you're picking in this game.
Sure. I'm taking Georgia, actually. I know we talked about it's hard to win twice. However, from my reasoning on this one is Georgia won in Texas and, again, in dominating fashion. And then now this game is in Atlanta, which is basically a home game. Now, I will say Texas fans are loyal. They're very good at being Texas fans. They're going to travel. This is not going to be one of those 80% of the stadium is Georgia, 20% is Texas. It's going to be 50-50 or pretty close to whatever the stadium allows for.
I think that in College Station, it was pretty one-sided just because I don't think any Texas fans could get tickets.
Well, I was about to say that's because the alumni and students obviously packed it. I will say a real quick aside, there was a guy on, I don't know if it was Reddit or Twitter, but he pulled up like how you can track flights and he took a screenshot of the tiny private airport that's in College Station, and there were like 30 planes that all came up on it.
Nice.
And they were like, well, guess all the billionaires are heading out.
That's funny.
They didn't want to deal with the traffic.
I get it. I wish I had that opportunity, that option.
Yeah.
One thing I will say is I did have the efficiencies wrong on the last page, and that's what actually did this.
I was going to tell you, Penn State's, you had Georgia's.
Yes. So Penn State was actually 9th and 10th, which makes way more sense when I started talking about
that's why I was looking at my computer. I was like, do I tell him now or do I wait?
No, you should have.
We had a good segue in the next one, luckily.
Yeah. So, but Georgia is 5th offensively, and I think that seems very high, if me personally. But
I'm surprised by it.
Yeah.
But I also don't know the equations for the efficiency, because I know there's one index a lot of people look at, the net success rating. If you've ever seen it, it's big on Twitter where they do the whole one team is like high and there's a bar graph and all of them. And no one really understands what the rating means. But all it is like if you get 5 yards on first down and it's like a certain number of yards left per down. So
I
you
see.
could win by 30, but if you get your first downs really well, but then you do nothing on second and third down, you look awesome on that rating.
That does not make sense.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's why basically just an aside of, hey, these are what these ratings are. I don't know the equation they use to figure it out. So it just, and their actual explanation is just based on offense's contribution to scoring margin on per play basis and adjusted for strength of opponents. So, I mean, they don't give the equation or anything. So
makes sense.
Do what you will with these arbitrary rankings, basically.
So Dustin picks Georgia. Okay. This was the hardest game to pick for me personally. Like by far the hardest game to pick because I wanted to say Georgia was going to win this game so bad, but I actually have to pick Texas. And the reason I had to pick Texas, domination on the offensive line and defensive line last week against Texas A&M. Love to see that. Last time they played Georgia, Georgia's defense was what saved them more than anything by far. Of course, we did see a Jade Barron pick six that was crazy, and Beers came flying on the field. That's what helped Texas put up 15 points. But at the same time, I think I'm going to have to side with the team that's been better consistently throughout the year.
Yeah, 100%.
While Georgia, of course, played really well in that big game, that was the first game that Texas played at a high. Okay, so Texas's schedule is really, really annoying because their strength of schedule is by far the worst in the whole SEC. And that has a lot to do with the fact that they just didn't play a bunch of top 5 SEC schools. But they've dominated who they needed to dominate.
Oh, yeah.
And the only game that was big before the Texas A&M game was Georgia. Well, Georgia had already played, and I can check to make sure I say this correctly, but I know Georgia had already played probably Tennessee. Hold on, let me pull this because they almost lost to Kentucky, and that was before the Texas game. I know that much. Should have lost.
That was one of those top 5 sad moments of the season.
Right. They had already played Clemson and Alabama at that point, including Auburn, Mississippi State, Kentucky, all these schools. Of course, Texas has already played SEC schools at that point too, but I'm going to say that those games really helped Georgia become more complete before playing Texas. Now Texas has got their feet under themselves, and I think they're going to win this game. 2.5. I'll take the Texas spread because
kind of have to.
Yeah, what is it? Exactly. I did pick New England at plus 2.5 over Indianapolis, and that worked out because they won by 1.
Yeah.
Indy won by 1, so that was the only time that'll actually happen.
Very rarely that works out.
Yeah. So I will be on the Texas side in this game. It was one of the hardest games to pick, but I just think how well the offensive line has played, and you can see a couple names up there, but they, like I said, Kelvin Banks Jr. wasn't even in. So this last week against Texas A&M, and they played so well. Their defensive line dominated.
Yeah, they did.
I think that they can do the same thing against actually one of my least favorite Georgia offensive lines in a long time. Is this team that's on the field right now.
To be clear, isn't saying a whole lot because their offensive lines are perennially also very good, though.
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. This is the worst Georgia offensive line I've seen, even knowing their offensive lines have been very good. This is by far the worst one. And I think that helps Texas dominate them. I also think this is one of the worst defensive front 7 units for Georgia in a long time. That helps Texas also. So I'm going to side with Texas, but I'm not confident. This is like a 4 out of 10 pick. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Have a confidence.
That's fair.
Next game though, SMU Clemson. I'll go first. I won't make you do all of them first.
I don't mind.
I'm gonna side with the Clemson Tigers, and it hurts my soul to say that, but I just think they are going to find a way to win. This game is not helpful either. Like, how is SMU the better team on paper? Home game should get the home game, and it's in freaking North Carolina. What is that about? What are we doing? Like, you should make this a true neutral site. I know they're not an ACC team, but you could have just put it in Louisiana, and it would have been okay. But they did not do that. They put it in North Carolina, giving Clemson what will be a home field advantage. I don't think SMU fans will travel as well as UT fans.
I think you underestimate the amount of absolute billionaires SMU produces.
I don't underestimate that, but how do you?
They literally created the death penalty because they had so much money.
They
Please remember
still
that.
have way too much money, and that's why they're
That's
good.
what I'm saying.
But that's why they're good.
They're
They're
doing it
good
again. They're just allowed to.
Yeah,
And
they're
it
paying
worked.
everybody. Yeah,
They're allowed to, which is why they're going to win.
I'm not mad at
taking
them.
us. Give me the billionaire ponies. It's
Oh
going to
my
be
God.
awesome. No, I mean, it's kind of similar to your reason that you're taking Texas over Georgia, just consistency. SMU, since that BYU game, has controlled games. They've been in a couple where they should have lost, like the Duke one, where they had to block a field goal. But at the same time, they've found ways to win. Clemson did not do that. They had a chance against South Carolina.
Probably should have won that game.
Well, again, they were driving, easily could have taken it to overtime, and Klubnik throws a pick. Now, South Carolina's amazing defense caused that to happen. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he just threw it to a safety who was just standing there. But that being said, I just think SMU is the more consistent team at this point, and they're able to win close games rather than Clemson, who has failed to do so recently. You can point to the Pitt game as they won that one. They pulled it out. Pitt also lost like 4 or 5 in a row at that point.
They did.
It's hard to use that one anymore. It was before the losing streak, but I think it'll be a fun game. I think this is probably our highest scoring of the Power Four conference championships. But I think SMU will pull it out. Plus, I will say partially there is me going, wow, it'd be awesome if SMU actually made the playoff in their first year in the ACC.
That, I guess, segues into my next question.
Many years of poor performance.
Yeah, but that segues into my next question. Well, it's also based on NIL. They did pay a lot of players to come play for them, including the best players on their teams, Kevin Jennings and Brashard Smith. Both guys that Elijah Roberts is a really solid edge for them.
Yeah.
Fine. Does SMU get in if they lose?
No, they won't. And I wouldn't want them to.
I think they do.
I would rather have South Carolina in their spot if they were to lose to Clemson.
I understand the idea, but I think they put them in. And that's a thing that I think there should be 2 ACC teams this year. It would have to be the fact that SMU loses to Clemson to make that happen. But otherwise, there's only going to be one ACC team.
I just don't want Miami in there.
They won't be. They're out.
I mean, the other problem for me, though, is SMU has the 75th strength of schedule.
They do.
Their strength of record is good. They're number 9 because they only have the 1 loss. But I want to see how much they lose by 2. If they lose by 3 touchdowns to Clemson, I definitely don't want them in the playoff.
Fair.
If they lose on a field goal in the fourth quarter, or they're down by 3, they drive down and miss a field goal and lose by 3. I don't necessarily want them to miss the playoff.
I have another question then, because I think this was something that needs to be brought up, because it's the question of, do you want to play in the title game? And
it depends on your spot. So it depends if you have everything to win or everything to lose. Such as, actually, I have a great 2 examples that I'd want to use here would be Miami and Tennessee. Tennessee gains just about nothing from being in the conference championship this week. They're already 7th, 8th, 6th in the AP poll. There's a 0.001% chance that enough happens to where they get knocked out of the playoff at this point. However, if they went in and say they were playing Texas and Texas smacks them by 3 touchdowns, they have everything to lose, and then they don't make it. Which is what Georgia's looking at now.
I think my question is more so, well, of course, that's a great example of why you could or why not, but it actually proves half of my point. So do you think you should be penalized for playing in an extra game in the conference championship game, or should you not be penalized? Because truly, you're playing an extra game to play in the conference championship. You should already be set in your position based on the year.
100%. However, because we're using the answer, or the question you asked is, should you be? The problem with that is it's hard. In a vacuum, the answer is no, you shouldn't be penalized. That should be that, like you said. You made the conference championship. Clearly, you're a top 2 team in that conference. There's no reason, especially one like the SEC, where everyone appears really good when you have Bama, South Carolina, Tennessee, blah, 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 to name the ones not playing in the championship game. No, you shouldn't. Hey, cool, you made the conference championship. However, because we're not using a computer simulation, it doesn't matter.
Right,
You can
okay.
say all you want with these 60, 70-year-old men who are voting of, no, they're objective and they care about the game of football and the love for it. No, if they like Bama, they're going to put Bama in over South Carolina because they have the same record and blah, blah, blah. And it could solely be based off we like Bama more because we're used to liking Bama more.
Right.
That's the
I think that's
downfall of a committee over a computer simulation.
That answers my question for sure. And I think the thing is, because of the fact that you have the opportunity to get you do get something out of this. And the question was kind of double-sided, of course, but for me, I think you should lose if you have something to gain. And both of these teams actually have something to gain, of course, with these two. But say Texas, Georgia, both of those teams are into the college football playoff no matter what happens, right? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, so we're on the same page there. So my thing is, if you win, you get the bye. And that is the thing to gain, right? So if you have the ability to gain something, you have to also be okay with what you lose.
Yeah.
And that would be possibly SMU falling out of the top 20, top 12, top 11, actually, in this situation, depending on who your 12th team is. I think that is why. I think SMU is in either way, even if they lose, but it has to be a close game. Blown out. It has to be the spread.
I mean,
basically.
I think if you get blown out in a conference championship game, you've already proven your worth in the playoff.
Exactly.
That's kind of, I look at the conference championships for the teams that do make it as a
playoff game.
This is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Like we need to make sure, like, this is your one chance to show you belong.
Fair.
Now, of course, like I said, what were we saying? Texas and Georgia, both of them have proven it.
Yes.
We're good there.
Neither
of them can really unprove this season at this point.
Perfect.
Lose by enough, make them the 12 seed, sure. But
good. I'm glad we're on the same page at least, but it's just, I think with a computer simulation, there should be some sort of simulation versus human interaction. And that's what we don't get right now.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people, and we'll talk about this when we get, but being the number 1 seed versus the number 5 seed, which one do you want more? Well, you probably want the 5 seed if you look at the true aspect of it, because, and we'll talk about this, but Georgia, if they lose, they're probably the 8 seed.
Yeah.
Good luck. Or Ohio State being the 9 seed because they just lost. Good luck. And so you run into that with the 1 seed. Let's go on to the next game, and we'll talk about that in a second, though. Mountain West Conference. Who are you at? Tell me. Come on. This is a big one.
Who am I taking?
Yeah.
I was flip-flopping last night. I was really close to putting in UNLV. Like, I had typed in UNLV and then changed my mind and switched it to Boise State. I can't pick against Ashton Genty, but
understand.
This is probably your hardest one to pick was Georgia, Texas. This one's my hardest one to pick because I could see this either being a close game, 3-point game either way, or I could see either team just blowing out the other because both have explosive offenses.
So another rematch that we've had already seen. So we already saw this game earlier in the year, and in that game, one of the best parts about Boise State, and we've talked about it before, we've actually posted a short about it, is their defensive line. Defensive line, their edges are really good. They have one of the top 3 every week. They're in the top 3 of sacks for the year. And the problem is that Haj Malik Williams doesn't do the same things as most normal NCAA quarterbacks.
Guy's an absolute animal of an athlete.
Yeah, UNLV doesn't do what normal teams do. Yeah. And we saw that really become an issue in that first game. And, of course, Boise State did pull it off, and they did win the game. But it was a really close game. Of course, I believe it was a 5-point game.
29-24.
Yeah, at the end of that.
No, that one was at UNLV. This one is on the blue turf in Boise.
Yeah, that's fine. Because I do really think that UNLV will win this game. I am picking UNLV. It actually has gone to -4 to Boise State recently on the betting line. But I'm going to take who I think will be the better quarterback. And they also have the best receiver in Ricky White.
Ricky White's really good.
He's awesome. So I'm going to take UNLV. This game is going to be possibly the closest game on paper. Like when you watch it, you're going to be like, wow, both of these teams are equally matched all the way across the board. And if UNLV wins, they're in. So they're playing for a lot.
Yeah. Well, You can't really say that though, because Boise State is in the same position. If they lose, they're out. If they win, they're in.
Right. Fair, absolutely. But Boise State gets a bye if they win. UNLV gets the 12th spot.
Maybe.
You think Arizona State? Hold on,
I was
we'll
gonna
talk
say,
about this
get
in
to
a
the
second.
next
Yeah,
game,
we'll
and
get-
that's why I'll bring it up.
Let's move to the next
It
game.
depends on the next game.
But as we were saying, my biggest problem is I look at these two teams and I'm like, well, Boise State, Ash DeGenti. That's it.
Yeah.
What else do they have? Honestly.
Maddox Madsen has made some fun plays, but I think it's hard to win on the blue turf.
Okay.
Honestly, I think that's one home field thing that we don't look at. They don't have the 100,000 people in the stands by any means, but it's just a weird environment.
No, I completely understand what you're saying there. They have basically blown everybody out on the blue turf except for Nevada.
Yeah, I'm looking at their season, and that's the only one that was less than 2 possessions.
They also blew everybody out in away games.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that. But
well, except Wyoming. That was a fun one.
yes.
Wyoming almost pulled off that upset.
And then, of course, Oregon did beat them in Oregon. But
yeah,
it's just
by 3.
I think this game is close, and I'm going to take the team. We've talked about this. They've already played. I'm going to take the team that looked really good in the game that they first played and lost to find a way to win this
Absolutely.
time.
That's fair. Like I said, I had them picked at first and changed my mind when I realized it was in Boise, and I couldn't do it.
Fair enough. Let's go on to the last game up here, the Big 12 championship game, which is Big 12 was crazy to end the year. Even the last game of the day, BYU versus Houston. If Houston wins, Colorado's in this and not Iowa State.
Yeah, that was a weird.
Or Arizona State, one of the two. I can't remember. It doesn't matter anymore. But yeah, it was a craziness based on win percentages and all this stuff versus opposite. Yeah. But we do get two teams that Iowa State and Arizona State. Another thing, Utah was projected to win this conference. It wasn't either of these teams. So that's a big thing also. And so Arizona State finding a way. They're -2 now. It has moved from 2.5 down to -2. I just think they win. I think Scattaboo is too good. I think that Tyson, their receiver, Jordan Tyson's very good. And I think they find a way to win.
I mean, I don't even think it's going to be a find a way to win thing. I think Arizona State will just win this one. I don't think it's going to be pull a rabbit out of a hat. Sam Levitt, what award did he just win?
He's a freshman transfer, I think. So I was I don't know
what his award would be.
There is a 55
he got something recently. I can't remember what they announced it was.
Gotcha.
But yeah, amazing for a freshman QB.
55% going to the Iowa State side right now.
Really?
Yeah, that's what the matchup predictor on ESPN has is 55%, which I actually find very confusing because
the analytics actually pick Iowa State too.
The last 3 games I've seen Arizona State kind of just dominate teams. They were dominating BYU and almost screwed it up, but they still were dominating in that game. Arizona, they won 47, beat K-State by 10. I don't know. I think that Arizona State right now has been playing so well that I'm just going to side with them. They didn't have the Kansas loss that Iowa State
shout
had.
out Kansas for just saying, you know what, we're going to ruin 3 teams' seasons
and then
get absolutely destroyed by Baylor.
not make a bowl game.
Which actually we ended up with the exact perfect amount of teams for bowls, with Hawaii beating New Mexico. And made it to where they were the exact perfect amount of 6-win bowl eligible teams without having to do the whole academic rankings and 5 wins and all that stuff.
Well, that's good. So yeah, both of us are on the Arizona State side here.
Yeah.
The next slide will show us basically. The next slide is a kind of a mock-up of what we should expect based on seeding for the. If this all happens, and we will have Cams on here, so we'll talk about who his winners were. But it also be based on the seeding for all these teams if they do make the college football playoffs. So let me hop over to that, and we'll get going. This is for Cam. This is Cameron's edition. And as you can see, he did pick Oregon to win. Let me go grab his stuff, actually. He picked Oregon to win. He picked Clemson to win. So Clemson actually jumped from 18 to 4.
And I think that's the right way to do it.
Yeah. And then he picked Texas to beat Georgia. He picked Arizona State to beat Iowa State, and then he picked UNLV to beat Boise State. So this is how his would kind of work out. Of course, You can always make a case for the 11 seed and the 10 seed and who should be ahead of who and if SMU would fall out. But this is kind of how we think it would look if we did get basically taking every winner, putting them in, and then also seeding based on where people are seated currently based on the last week's AP. So that's Cam's, and then I'll pull Dustin's. It's going to be very funny to see mine because it looks so different than all of these.
So the only thing I would change on mine personally is I'd flip Arizona State and Boise State. Maybe.
I mean, they're currently 10 and 12 is the problem. So that's why I think you kind of have to take into account last week's rankings.
Again, based on computer, I think Boise State earns it. If it was, but I'm also guessing what a committee of 12 people is going to do.
Fair.
And I think they're going to go, well, there's a Power 4 that won, and they're a spot or two behind the rankings. We'll put them in because they're Power 4 and not.
Well, I guess my question is Arizona State that special to move to 4? Because truly, I would agree with you if that was Colorado.
Right.
If that was Colorado sitting at 12, I think they put them at 4.
No, I don't think they're special enough, but I think having the Power 4 is enough.
Interesting.
That they'll do it.
I don't because
especially because the first year of the 12 team.
No, that's fair. I just don't want to
set that precedent. I think they'll want to set a precedent of the Power 4 teams are who we.
I honestly wanted to know one of the Power 4s to lose. Remember? That was we wanted that chaos.
Well, it was pretty close, but unfortunately Arizona State pulled it together and not as fun. So
I do want to take a second and talk about what it means to be the 1 seed. Let's do it on Cam's actually, because I think his is actually So what it means to be the 1 seed versus the 5 seed. Okay. Penn State loses the game against Oregon in Cam's model, right?
Sure.
They play UNLV in their first round and then Clemson in the second round.
Yep.
Okay. While Oregon plays the winner of Tennessee and Ohio State. Which road would you rather be on, Penn State or Oregon?
Oh, absolutely Penn State.
Right?
Even though you have to play an extra game. Yeah, Penn State.
Okay.
For sure.
So that's the problem here. We have, and I actually really love how the NFL does it, where you take the lowest seed and put them against the highest seed every time.
Yeah. That's an interesting thing. Adaptive seeding.
Yeah, I love it because it gives you a reason to want to be the 1 seed.
Yeah.
Here,
the whole point.
That is not what we're having. No matter what, if every team won, like say every higher seeded team won, you'd still have to play the 8 seed.
Yeah.
But what about that time when SMU beats Georgia? And then all of a sudden Oregon gets to play SMU instead of Ohio State or Tennessee.
Right.
Which is that adaptive type of seeding allows that. Maybe UNLV pulls up. I don't think it'll happen in this situation.
Sure.
But say UNLV pulls it off. Well, then Oregon gets the easiest second round game, not Clemson, who is the worst team in the top 4.
Right.
I think adaptive seeding, like we said, is the best way to do it. And it is flawed right now. So I think that this is something we can look at later in a couple of years and be like, hey, how can we fix this? When somebody will win a game, and it's going to piss everybody off when their team has to play a really good team, and the other teams are playing bad teams. Because automatically, Ohio State can't be 1 through 4.
Yeah.
Georgia can't be 1 through 4. So I think adaptive seeding makes that better.
I don't think we'll ever see that in college. Because in the NFL, all the playoff games are hosted at their home stadiums. Therefore, and it comes down to revenue and whatnot, but fans will buy tickets to their stadium, the away team.
Right.
Or actually, never mind, they don't do series.
So what?
But they'll buy tickets. It's easy. Their home fans will fill it up.
Right.
Whereas in college, outside of the first round now, with this new playoff system, outside of that, it's at these bowl games. And these college fans are going to have to buy tickets early because they're traveling thousands of miles to do it. And so I don't see them doing adaptive seeding because this way you can prepare. If our team wins this game, this is where it's going to be. I can get tickets. I'm sure they'll have some pre-sale thing set up for it.
So there's an answer to that. And the answer is the fact that if you look at how college football is set up, they play within so since we have bowl games starting December 8th, I believe, and ending New Year's 6th, so probably the second week of January, right? That seems about right.
A bowl game started December 14th. They're announced on the 8th.
Oh, okay. So December 14th and then second week of January or something.
Yeah.
You could play some of these games at the beginning of the bowl year, play the semifinal or play them like spread out more, giving you a little bit more time. And then also you should, based on who gets the pick. So say, or we're talking about Oregon. Oregon's number 1. Well, they get the Rose Bowl then. We're not going to give the Rose Bowl to number 3 because it doesn't make any sense, right? They're going to say, hey, the Rose Bowl is for Oregon. The Fiesta Bowl for Arizona State. Texas gets the Sugar Bowl. And then Clemson goes over and plays in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
Which would make way more sense based on geographically. But you set that when those teams win and get the opportunity to be like, we are the home team. We're going to get the closest big bowl game to ourselves. And that would kind of build that way because you know who's going to get these points on December 8th. And then you can just breed the bowls off from there. Basically.
But again, that only solves the home team problem, not the adaptive seeding problem.
Well, so
unless you're okay with it being an 80% in a playoff game, like fan advantage.
Yeah.
Which kind of ruins the point of a neutral site game.
But these teams earn those things.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
Kind of, but then at the end, I mean, but it's the same with the Super Bowl in the NFL. You've got a destined site, and people have all year to, or actually, like what, 2 years?
Well, I think we would set the college football championship game at one place for the whole year. That wouldn't change. But just as like regionally, you can see how regionally this makes sense.
Yeah,
for the most part. So if Georgia were to be the team that won, Texas flipped, Georgia would get the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah.
And then so that region would get the Sugar Bowl region.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because and let's see, does it work on Dustin's? Let's see. Okay, so yes, it does. Because then this would be your Orange Bowl. This would be your Sugar Bowl. This would be Arizona is the Fiesta Bowl and then Rose Bowl again.
What if they're rotated?
What do you mean?
The bowls rotate. Like they get selected for being a semifinal game or for the championship game.
Right. So you would have to, but they're also home games first round.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about after the first round.
Yeah, so
we know where those are.
So basically, you would say the quarterfinals are the ones that are set in those places, and then the semifinals we would have to find a new way to do it because the semifinals are the only ones that are a little weird.
Right. Well, the championship.
The championship would be set at the beginning of the year.
Which, well, they do. How are they rotating them now?
I want to say it's just
because last year it was rotating every
AT&T
over many years.
Yeah, they do. I want to say it's every year now, but I can't remember the top of my head. But
yeah, but like, are they doing like one game gets? Well, obviously one bowl gets the championship.
Let's look.
2 get the semis, and then the quarters. Because there aren't 7 big bowls.
There's 5.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. So what they're doing though is it would make sense. So the problem is, like I said, the semifinals, but you could make 4 bowls easily because the home games are going to be Tennessee, Texas. You know, the first round will be home games.
Sure.
The second round will be the quarterfinals. Then you pick the 4 big bowls or AT&T Stadium if you want to play there. And then for the semifinals, we'd have to find a way to build this. And then the finals would be wherever we preset it.
Yeah.
But I think that would build better, especially because then you could do the seeding and it wouldn't matter because if one's going to play no matter what because they got the bye week.
Right.
So if 12 wins, they're just going to go wherever one's playing.
Yeah.
And you hope your fans travel, which they should because most of these teams are going to be Power Force.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's my thoughts. So it would work here. Let's go to mine because mine is the weird one. Texas is actually my number 1 team based on how rankings worked out because I had Texas beating Georgia,
Penn State
beating Oregon, and then Clemson beating SMU and Arizona State beating Iowa State.
Yeah.
UNLV gets in at the 12 seed, and then everybody kind of sparses out from there. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 5 is going to be the Big Ten loser. 6 will be Notre Dame, and then 7 will be Georgia or Texas. So if Texas loses, that's where it changes the rankings a little bit because Texas then will be, I believe, 5. But otherwise, everything should be the same.
I think what'll end up happening, and it's a small change, is just Tennessee will be above the loser of Texas, Georgia.
Flipping?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like basically flip your 7-8.
So you're telling me Georgia's playing Ohio State in the first round?
Potentially.
That'd be crazy.
And yours, I think that's how yours would play out with who you have winning. Yeah.
Who is the easiest track out of every team?
On yours specifically? SMU. Arizona State, and then after playing Notre Dame.
I was going to say Oregon.
I would say Oregon would be the other one of the non-really high-ranked teams. But
I agree with you, SMU. I actually would say Notre Dame has an easier schedule because I thought
you meant like of the Cinderellas.
No, I was just talking about any team.
Yeah, then Notre Dame would be the easier one than SMU.
And then they get to play Georgia or Penn State. So really their schedule's pretty solid because I think most of the good teams are on this side of the bracket with Clemson, Ohio State, Texas, Tennessee, Oregon. Like that's the side I don't want to be a part of. So yeah, I think the seating needs to change like we just talked about. But I think it's a lot of fun to talk about and just go around and, look at all the different scenarios, of course. But we don't have any Super Dogs this week, guys. Dustin informed me that there's not a single game of more than 10 points.
That's why we did pick them for all the games.
Yep. So
which is good. It'll make for good conference championships. You don't really want Super Dogs in that.
Right.
The whole point is for fun.
Right. One thing I do have to say, let me actually pull this back up so I can put it on our short because I'm going to have to make sure we talk about it. One of the biggest things that we're going to be doing, we are going to be doing a giveaway for a Bowl Pick'em Confidence. We're going to be doing a giveaway for our Bowl Pick'ems. This will be where everybody gets an opportunity that is part of our team. Team will also be on it. So Cam, me, Dustin will all be picking teams. We're going to have a full video of us picking every single game, all 36. I believe it's 36 now. Every single game. And we will be posting that next. We'll be doing that next Wednesday. We haven't decided if we're going to do live or not yet, but it will come out on Thursday if it's not live. Basically us talking through every game, looking at all the prospects, looking at everything. And then we will also be doing the Confidence Bowl Pick'em, where we are going to be creating the contest on ESPN, where everybody can get in there. That will be a $25 gift card giveaway. If you win the whole contest, you will be getting that gift card. You have to follow on Instagram, and also be subscribed on the YouTube channels to be able to earn access to that. So if you're not doing any of those things, please do it. Go like this video if you haven't yet also. But I'm really excited. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to get a lot of hopefully engagement with all this stuff because there's just so much fun stuff and you can't ever get all 36 games right. So don't expect to. It's just going to be a fun experience getting us all to do the stuff together. So very excited about it.
No, it's super fun. We've been doing it just in our friend group for the last several years now. It'll be fun to do it with a lot more people.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Now we'll have hopefully we'll get, close to 20 to 30 people doing it, and then we'll be able to give those prizes out. But I'm really excited. I think that, putting our football knowledge against just normal people is always fun because normally we lose. Like, honestly, we come up with all these analytics and this ideas and yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, that didn't happen anyway, like we expected it to, So we'll be doing some research coming up this next week after bowls will be released on the 8th. And then we'll be talking about it on Wednesday. And then Saturday, the 14th, full start. So we'll be talking about all that stuff. We'll be getting after it. We also have, of course, videos coming out this week. Me and Cam are doing Thursday Night Football, and then we'll do the weekend stuff. We'll have our live stream, and then we'll do it all over again. So I'm really excited. A lot of fun stuff happening, and we'll get after it. So see y'all next time.
Thank y'all very much for joining us today.